Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to this mini extra episode for DL Weekly. I'm Teg Bushman.
And I'm Teresa Urban. This episode's going to be a little bit different and much more serious from our typical podcast. We will be taking a step back from Disneyland to talk about what's happening in the world.
Specifically, we want to join the conversation about race, inequality, and the Black Lives Matter movement.
Up until now, we have tried to keep our personal lives separate from DL Weekly, and we work to keep the podcast just Disney-focused. I'm going to be completely honest and very transparent with all of you. The Black Lives Matter movement is incredibly important to me, and I do support it fully. I have been spending time participating in peaceful protests in my community, candlelight vigils, and listening to people from our community bravely share their stories. Teg and I just weren't sure the best way to approach it with our podcast audience since we have kept our personal lives separate. And that is 100%. That was a choice that we had made from day one. It had nothing to do with what's going on now, just how we viewed the podcast in general. We wanted it to stay Disney focused, specifically Disneyland focused. And we just really wanted to share our love for Disneyland with everyone. So it wasn't out of fear from losing supporters or even losing listeners. It was just us trying to keep the balance of DL Weekly, the podcast, being a safe space. So let me just be perfectly clear. Hate has absolutely no place in our DL Weekly community. However, it has become apparent that we needed to do more and that we needed to say something as DL Weekly and not just be Teg and Teresa and doing things in our personal lives with this issue. The issue is bigger than all of us, and we all need to come together to make this right.
Also, the two of us and producers Vern and James are white people. We're not the voices that need to be heard right now. We'd rather amplify the voices of the Black, Indigenous, and people of color. We'd rather listen to what they have to say. I mean, we talk a lot every single week, but we're talking about fun stuff like Disneyland that's not very serious. So we use this as an escape for us to get out of things, with all the stuff going on. And of course, before this, we had COVID-19. I mean, it's still going on. But all of this stuff together, we tried to limit a lot of that because when you choose to listen to our podcast, you want to hear about Disneyland and the place that probably makes you really happy. And for us to sit here and talk about COVID-19 or racial injustice is not what you probably are tuning to us for. In my opinion, there are plenty of places on the internet, on TV, in your communities, where you do get all of that information and you do get that support. Now, like Teresa said, just because we didn't say something on the podcast doesn't mean that we don't believe in this cause and that we are not doing things in our personal lives about it. We just didn't think it was something that we should put into the podcast, I guess.
Yeah, so it's been a really interesting experience for me. I think I don't really care who you are or where you are in life. Racism has somehow impacted you some way or another, whether you realized it or not. It might be, one of your neighbors or one of your coworkers or somebody that's close to you has been 100% affected by it. So, this is something that we all need to pay attention to. It's something that we all need to get better at doing. I mean, the world could be a whole lot better if there was less hate and if there was less negativity. So it's something, very simple that we can do and that we just need to be more aware of. Mm-hmm. So it's been really amazing going to these local rallies here in our community and listening to these brave people come forward and tell their stories. It's brought me to tears, and it's not something that happened to me. The stories are obviously not things that happened to me personally, but my heart just hurts for these people that their normal day-to-day lives are just so awful, and it's something that they completely cannot control. Something as basic and as simple as the color of their skin, and it is making their version of life so much different than what I experience in life. And that's just, it's wrong. I mean, absolutely wrong.
Yeah. Well, producer James and I haven't been as active in the community as our exchange student Simone goes home in less than a week from the day we're recording this. With the pandemic still happening, we didn't want to risk him getting sick and not being able to safely travel to be back home with his family. That being said, producer James is starting to get tired of how much I need to talk about this. I am constantly talking about Black Lives Matter stuff at night. Most of the people on my social media feeds are supporters of the cause, and seeing videos and things reshared of all of the violence happening is terrifying to me. A middle-aged white guy, it's terrifying to me. I can't even imagine what it's like for the people that are being brutalized day in and day out by everybody. So this is just a very interesting time. It's opened my eyes. I mean, I a few years ago when we had President Obama, I thought, oh, we're moving past all of this and things have gotten better. We have a black president. And so I thought like everything was great. And then, of course, we had an administration change along with that. I'm not totally blaming him for those of you who are supporters of our current president. I'm just saying that it seems like a lot of people that are on the other side of the issue, their voices have been amplified during this time. Yeah. So it surprised me because I thought we had moved past this as a people, but apparently we have not. We are going to continue this podcast focusing on what's happening in the park. If there's an opportunity to weave this conversation in, we'll look for it. This week's episode, we talked about some issues that came up that we saw online about one of the performers at the Frozen show as an example of how we will weave this in. Otherwise, we're going to maintain DL Weekly as an escape from the real world. I also want to throw in something that I think needs to also be said. In the podcasting community, there's been a few of us we talked to, like our friends over at The Sweet Spot as an example. We talked to David over at Fresh Baked. We communicate with each other in this Disney podcast online content creation community. And one thing that I will say is if you're going to approach anybody with the fact that you think that they have stayed silent or you disagree or you think that they're being complicit in it because they're not saying something, just remember that because they don't say something doesn't mean something is not happening. It just means that they've made that decision to not talk about it. I know that not only have we been contacted by people to say something and to use our platform to help this cause get more attention, but we've also seen other people that create content get approached, and sometimes the way that it's approached is from a very adversarial, I would say, tone, possibly. And I would say that it doesn't help anybody to point fingers and don't jump to conclusions and think that just because somebody hasn't used their platform that they don't believe in that or that they're against it or whatever. It's just like an editorial choice, basically. And especially with things like our podcast, Teresa and I talked numerous times every week when we put the script together. How much do we want to talk about this? How much do we want to get into the thick of it? Because I firmly believe that there are people that listen to this podcast that are on both sides, and our opinion may not be something that they want to listen to. That's not what they tune into us for. So that's why we try to keep it on topic with Disney and to keep it as light as possible, even though there's a lot of serious stuff going on right now.
Just a couple things for everyone to kind of think about, because the one thing that I've really been sitting in is it was like sprinting into a wall head first. It's just, oh my, this is horrible. This is awful. What can I do? What can I do? How can I fix this? Because I really firmly believe that this movement is bigger than us. It's bigger than everyone, and we all need to work harder, and we all need to get better at being better. So some simple things that you can do, even if you don't think, I've never said anything racist in my life, and that may be true. And I'm not trying to single you out, and I'm not trying to say you're the problem, because you're not the problem. The problem is that it exists, quite frankly. So we all just need to get better at being better. So whether that's taking time to, educate yourself on different things, or to, there's all sorts of podcasts that are out there. There's books. There's even TV shows and movies to kind of get more educated on what this movement is all about and what things are still happening in our world about this. Some things that you can do personally is just, just be kind, right? For example, when you're at the parks, we talk about how important it is to be kind and really be nice to your cast members, right? Because they're there for you. They're helping you. It's their job. You don't need to be nasty to them, whatever. Same thing goes with Black people, people of color, people that are different from you, just people in general. Just be nice, have compassion, have empathy. You don't know what's going on with this person. Something super awful could have just happened, and then you're the next person that they see. So, try not to judge. Don't try not to judge. I know people say, "Oh, it's our human nature to judge." try to fight human nature, try to make yourself uncomfortable, because these people have been uncomfortable their entire lives just because of the color of their skin. So I think it 100% is fine if we're uncomfortable for a little while trying to work through this to try to make it right.
Absolutely. Everybody deserves to be happy and to live a happy, fulfilling life. And unfortunately for some people in our society, a lot of them are people of color or from different backgrounds, basically if you're not white. And in a lot of cases, still if you're not a male. There's a lot of things out there that make your life very challenging where it shouldn't be. So I would recommend, if you are able and haven't already, to do some research online, support the causes that you believe in, donate your time, donate your money, put your voice, amplify those voices not being amplified right now, and just be good to one another, basically, I would say.
Just please don't take what was perceived as our silence as compliance. That 100% was not our intent. And honestly, I was a little taken aback when we had people ask us what our thoughts were on the movement, because I thought that we had made it very apparent that we were very open people. We're very open-minded. We love everyone. If you love Disney, you're 100% fine with us. So
right.
If you don't like Disney, no, I'm just kidding. But, so it made me take a step back and go, oh my gosh, how are we coming off to people that this was even a question? But, it's bigger than that. I don't think it was people questioning Tag and Teresa as good people or not good people. It's a really tough issue. And unfortunately, there are people that don't think that racism exists at all and are completely blind to it. And quite frankly, I think I was one of those people that had, the rose-colored glasses on, and, everything's fine. We're all happy. We're all good. This happens in big cities. It doesn't happen in our small town, and, that kind of thing.
Well, the other thing too, Teresa, is and I think everybody who listens to the podcast knows this about you. You're the optimist.
I'm optimistic to a fault.
I appreciate it, Teresa.
So in conclusion, hate has zero place on our podcast. It has no place in our podcast community, Disneyland, or the world. This is a huge issue that needs all of us to come together, and we all need to do better to make this right.